Okay, so I think we're good. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Devlin. I am a senior planner at the RTA. Also joining us from the RTA is Michael Horstein, planning manager. He will be available towards the end of the webinar to provide any answers to questions that you may have during the webinar. So a few notes before we get started. As mentioned, please double check that your microphone is muted to prevent any feedback that could prevent other listeners from hearing important notes. If you have any questions, please send a direct IM to Michael Horstein. You should see his name there on the right. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available to the public later this week. And finally, I strongly encourage everyone to take a look at the program guide available on the RTA Access to Transit page. The guide provides a lot of detail that we may not be able to cover today. So to start with some background, for those of you who may not be as familiar with the program, the RTA began the Access to Transit program in 2012 to help address what we saw was a lack of funding for implementing TOD recommendations of plans completed through the RTA's community planning program. In these plans, providing facilities for pedestrians and cyclists is frequently a key goal, as we feel, in addition to supporting transit ridership and TOD, improvements for bicyclists and pedestrians can provide a number of other great community benefits, such as safer streets, less congestion, lower demand for parking, which then can lead to better land use and safer first and last mile connections for transit riders. In the past 4 rounds of the Access to Transit program, the RTA has funded projects in 28 communities and leveraged $13 million in federal, local, and RTA funds. I'd encourage, if you'd like to see a list of past projects, you visit rtams.org. That's rtams.org. Our program looks for projects that are within walking distance of CTA, Metra, or PACE service that will improve connectivity, and our recommendations from a community plan that's either completed or near completion. It's not necessary that the project being submitted be detailed in the plan, but the applicant should show a logical connection between the plan recommendations and the project. So previously, the types of projects that are eligible include bus and rail warming shelters, crosswalks and signal heads, sidewalk connections, covered bike parking or new bike racks, ADA accessibility improvements, and then new this year, we've added the eligible project of micromobility, such as bikeshare or scooter share. So in order to make the program more accessible, the RTA has made significant additions to the Access to Transit program for the 2020 calls. Applicants can now apply to 2 separate categories. Category A includes funding for phase 2 and construction of eligible projects, as previously mentioned. This is the traditional approach that has been offered in previous calls, which includes CMAQ funding. The primary addition to this category for the 2020 call includes the micromobility, as previously mentioned. Completely new in the 2020 call, though, is Category B, which is Phase 1 engineering expenses for planned bicycle and pedestrian improvements near transit that directly improve access to transit in high-need communities. This program will use available RTA funding to complete Category B projects. Therefore, projects will not be included in the upcoming CMAQ timeline. So to provide a little bit more detail on Category A first, Category A is designed to leverage RTA and local funds to apply for federal CMAQ funding. If you're not familiar, CMAQ stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, and it is a federal program that provides funding for transit, pedestrian, and bicycle facilities, among many other things. So in our region, the program is administered by CMAP, and projects are selected by the CMAQ Selection Committee, which works in cooperation with CMAP staff. So therefore, it's important that funding for Category A projects is contingent on the RTA's application being accepted into the CMAQ program, which will be finalized in the fall of 2021. So although we've had past success at obtaining CMAQ funding for this program, it should be kept in mind that our CMAQ application will be one of many, as it's a very competitive program. Applicants seeking Category A funding should remain aware that CMAQ prioritizes new facilities over replacement facilities. So, for example, sidewalks, applicants should not propose to replace existing sidewalks simply because they are uneven. The exception to this is if the existing facilities are so bad that they are unusable. For Category A, we're seeking projects with estimated budgets between $150,000 and $1 million, and projects identified in a planning process completed through the RTA Community Planning Program or the CMAP Local Technical Assistance Program. As you may know, CMAQ is an 80-20 split program, so to assist with the 20% local match, the RTA will contribute half of that amount for most communities. In some cases, communities with proven financial hardship, the RTA will contribute the entire 20% local match. This eligibility is determined according to local match guidelines that CMAP uses. I'll go into a little bit more detail later in the webinar. Important for Category A is the Phase 1 engineering. Selected Category A applicants must initiate Phase 1 engineering upon notification from the RTA of acceptance into the Access to Transit program. It's the applicant's responsibility to secure funding for Phase 1, and it must be completed by December 31st of this year. So the Phase 1 process is required for all projects to be eligible for CMAQ. And even if the improvements are being built on a local roadway, you must follow IDOT's engineering approval process as the CMAQ funds go through IDOT's hands. The new Category B is, as mentioned, is only Phase 1 engineering expenses related to bicycle and pedestrian improvements near transit and high-need communities. Again, same eligible projects as mentioned previously. Eligible project budgets are between $5,000 and $50,000 and are identified in any community planning initiative. Important note that $5,000 to $50,000 is the cost of Phase 1 engineering, not the total project cost. So Category B is obviously a much quicker process. Once selected into the program, applicants will enter into an agreement with the RTA for expected cost of Phase 1 engineering. Applicants can either complete the engineering internally if they have the capacity to do so, requesting reimbursement for staff time after the project is complete, or they may procure an engineering firm to complete the expenses and then submit invoices to RTA for reimbursement. It's important to note that funding is only available for Category B for standalone projects. They will not be included in the CMAQ application, regardless of whether the Phase 1 engineering is complete by December of this year. But we do encourage that any projects that are completed through Category B are encouraged to reapply to the future rounds of Access to Transit for Category A, Phase 2 engineering and construction. So as mentioned, definition of high-need municipalities are based on the economic and demographic characteristics of the area served and are usually smaller communities and those with a lower tax base or median income. Community need is based on the best available data for the area affected by the project, and for large municipalities or counties, we will consider the immediate area, data available for that immediate area that the project may impact. So to go over the timeline of this year's call for projects and the following programs, this year's call for project opened on March 13th, and we plan to close it on May 8th. We offer a generous window of time for potential applicants to consider feasible projects and put together the information required in the application. The application is very straightforward, and it's only a few pages of simple questions, so it's not too tedious. Once applications are received, the RTA will spend the summer reviewing applications and compiling necessary data on each before making a final decision around July. Applications in both the Category A and Category B that have been accepted will then spend the remaining months of 2020 completing Phase 1 engineering. Once Category B applicants complete Phase 1 engineering and submit the necessary invoice to the RTA, their time in the program is complete. Category A applicants that successfully complete Phase 1 engineering by December 31st of this year will then be packaged by the RTA into a single CMAQ application that will be submitted in the early spring of 2021. If the RTA is successful and is selected in the fall of 2021 to receive CMAQ funding, each applicant, Category A applicant, will enter into an IGA with the RTA, and project sponsorship will be transferred to the community. When you're ready to apply, I'd recommend that you revisit the slide. Again, it will be made available online to confirm that you've met the requirements previously discussed. So for Category A, this includes outlining how the project is supported by a plan either completed through the RTA or CMAP planning programs. Show that the capacity to complete Phase 1 engineering by 12/31/2020 exists. Provide detailed estimate of project cost, a concept plan and location map, a statement of community support, and any other relevant supporting data, which could include project area zoning, population and employment densities, and transit ridership. For Category B, you'll need to make sure that this includes outlining how the project is supported by any completed planning work, not just RTA or CMAP planning programs, an estimate of Phase 1 engineering cost, an example of project type, and a location map, as well as a statement of community support. So for both projects, for both categories, a statement of support should be a single statement from your mayor or other elected official. So now that we've gone over the details of the call for projects and the program, we'd like to offer some guidance on how to choose a project, as we're sure that you may have multiple eligible projects to consider. First, especially for Category A applicants, we suggest you consider how well the project is able to positively affect transit ridership or replace automobile trips with walking or biking. This consideration is obviously very important for CMAQ scoring and something that the RTA will heavily consider in our selection process. For the betterment of the program in general, it's really the RTA's responsibility for the Access to Transit program to choose strong and impactful projects. We also encourage that you lean towards projects that have the potential to improve high ridership transit services or impact areas with high population or employment densities. And then lastly, we also encourage you to start by reviewing recommendations from your planning documents, as they are often grounded in community feedback and data, as that's very important to us. So just as a quick note before I move forward, we are nearing the end of the formal presentation. So if you have any questions you'd like to address today, please send them to Michael soon. So we did want to provide some information on implementation in the RTA's partnership expectations to give you a better idea of capacity you'll need for implementation. Again, I'd encourage you to visit the program guide, as it'll provide further detail. Additionally, more information will be provided if your application is accepted into the Access to Transit program. So when an applicant is accepted to the program, the RTA will request status updates from the sponsors on a quarterly basis. We are happy to provide program guidance, but overseeing the engineering and construction progress would be your responsibility. The applicants or project sponsors must front the entire local share of the project cost and then immediately invoice the RTA for reimbursement. So for Category A projects, for example, the community would cover the entire 20% local match and then immediately request reimbursement for the RTA, from the RTA for the portion agreed upon. Invoices would need to be submitted in increments over the course of the project, and that's up to the applicant to decide, either quarterly or at significant project milestones such as 25, 50, or 75%, whatever you prefer. Okay, and with that, I'm going to attempt to hand the microphone over to Michael Horstein. If you haven't been able to submit questions, please feel free to submit any questions to my email shown so we can get back to you quickly.
Great. Thank you so much, Alex. Michael Horstein with the RTA speaking now. Again, if you do have any questions, please use the chat feature. You can send one to me directly, or you can send one to the everyone category, and we'll try to answer those as best we can. There is one question about, of course, and we're also talking about this internally, but do we see COVID-19 impacting the ability of communities to, a couple of things, just simply apply to the program, the Access to Transit program, or to complete phase one engineering specifically. And so we do continue to monitor that. If we've decided to kind of keep things as is for now, but as we all know, COVID-19 impacts and guidance is changing on a daily basis. So we'll continue monitoring that. If we do see any changes regarding the program, regarding the timeline, regarding when applications are due, if we decide to make any changes, we'll certainly reach out to everyone and send a message, some sort of email blast, or post it on our website as well. So please stay tuned just in case. We do have another question. Pedestrian scale lighting, has that been funded in the past? Can it be in connection with other bike ped improvements? And I will say yes, that has been funded in the past. And in that particular case that I'm thinking of, it was in connection, in partnership with other pedestrian improvements. So it was part of a package project where there were multiple improvements to improve access to a metro station that included some pedestrian infrastructure as well as some pedestrian scale lighting. So that certainly can be applied for and considered by the RTA. One question that we sometimes get is just, how do I know if I'm an eligible community for some extra assistance? In this case, particularly for the Category B projects that are new now for this year, where we're helping communities just complete phase one engineering. Certainly give us a call or send us an email and ask if you're eligible or not. It is based off of CMAP's guidance, as Alex spoke to a little bit earlier. So if you're familiar with that, feel free to reference CMAP's guidance. But if you do have a specific question, please give us a call or send us an email. Question about timeline for spending funds and completing a project. The timing does vary. We do, in the long run, just rely specifically on CMAQ requirements and working with IDOT and working through a project with them. We're finding through the program that projects are taking at least a good year to complete once a project's been awarded, funding, all of the funding elements, just to go through the steps of phase two engineering and design, and then actually getting a project constructed is taking a good year, and those are for small, simple projects. Other projects that are more lengthy will certainly take much more time, 2 years, possibly even longer for something that's more complex, or for a situation where there's something that's uncovered during engineering that wasn't anticipated that might delay a project. Again, feel free to send any more questions. We will have a recording available think, Alex, you mentioned this already, recording of this webinar available. And so once we have that put together, we'll post it to our website, rtachicago.org/A2T for access to transit.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Michael. Okay, thanks for everyone for joining us today. Have a great week.